Okay, now we're going to talk about haematology. So haematology is full blood counts, clotting. Now on here they've lumped a load of things together, so normally you'd get just the full blood count, but they put clotting together and other things. So we'll just go through it all in turn because I think it would be helpful, whatever. So let's start with this one. So you've got full blood count, TTG, anti-tissue transglutaminase, endomysial IgA, and infectious mononucleosis. They've got a whole lumping of together tests here, which is not very helpful. But anyway, let's just focus on the full blood count, because this is the standard way they report it now, which is really annoying because before the hemoglobin, which is the most important one, used to be at the top, and it's not. It's hidden now in the middle here, and not really highlighted. So you have to. So the first thing I would look at is the hemoglobin. That's the most important thing. They also don't give you normal reference ranges for that anymore, which is really helpful. But basically, it's meant to be over 13 in men and over 11 in women. But I wouldn't worry too much about it. Now, the problem with full blood counts is there will always be one thing on the full blood count which is slightly out of sync. Usually the hematocrit, because it varies a lot between different people. So most of the time with our technician, she leaves full blood counts because there's this one thing that's slightly abnormal, and I have to go through and kind of deal with it, which is fine, but there's just more to do with the reporting of them. That's the problem. If they just reported the hemoglobin separately, then we could just deal with that, couldn't we? But this doesn't really work like that. So this one you would probably leave because this was slightly abnormal. So TTG, so anti-tissue transglutaminase, otherwise known as TTG. That's a test for gluten intolerance celiac disease, and this one's quite straightforward because it's either negative or positive. This is on page 8. If negative TTG within a stated range, which it is here, so you can see it's 1, there's 0 to 7. This one's 1 and it's 0 to 7. That's fine. Ignore all this stuff, that's just ignore it. It's fine. But they're the ones that are normal. This is related to it, so endomysial IgA, so that's related to it as well. So if that's normal, if that's negative, and this is within the normal range, then you can file that. These two will often come separate, and you'll be able to file the entire report if that's the case. So I'm just going to file a battery on that one. So I filed these two headers. Infectious mononucleosis, again on page 8, usually attached to FBC. It always comes as black because there's no reference range, because it's either negative or positive. So this one's quite straightforward. Negative. Don't worry about this. If this is negative, it's negative. So you can file as normal. So we've managed to file 3 out of 4 of those. So here we have another full blood count. So here we can see that the platelet count is slightly abnormal. This thing's slightly abnormal. So again, you would leave that. Again with TTG, so this is a positive result. This is really helpful actually because they've actually written here consistent with untreated celiac disease. So that's not normal, is it? That's not right. And you can see here that it's quite obvious. It's 45, the upper limit is 7, 37, the upper limit is 7. That's completely abnormal. So that will be passed to a clinician. And again, associated with that, this antibody is positive, which is associated with this. So that's positive. And infectious mononucleosis, that's positive. So at least they're using negative and positive in this one, so it's a bit easier. Again, folate, not difficult. Folate, as we talked before, that's got a very clear reference range. It's either within that reference range or it isn't. If it is, it's normal, you can file it. If it isn't, leave it. So this is too low. So see if we've got any more. So let's go to this one, glucose tolerance test. So basically with the glucose tolerance test, they take a blood test and then they give them a load of glucose to eat, and then they take it again to see how much the level goes up. So let's just have a look at this. So this is on page 5, bottom, glucose tolerance test. Test 1 less than 6, which it is. Test 2 less than 7.8, which it is. No, take no action. Glucose tolerance test, test 1 less than 6, no it isn't. Test 2 less than 7.8, definitely not. This is abnormal. So you pass, so you would leave that in the box. Okay, so we're getting there now, aren't we? Let's just get rid of this lot. So we've just got 3 left. So we're going to get into U's and HbA1c's. So we've got a lot of stuff here. I mean, this wouldn't come as this amount of stuff on one thing. So let's start with U's and E's. So on page 8, U's and E's, all results in range and EGFR above 60 is normal. So what we're looking, so U's and E's here, sodium levels in range, urea levels in range, potassium levels in range, creatinine levels in range. So that's all good. Then we look at the EGFR, which is this one. Here it says not calculated, so you're going to have a problem there. But actually, normally it would say a number there, and if that would be above 60, then that would be normal. So you could, and those two would generally come separate, so you could file that as normal. So let's have a look at HbA1c. So HbA1c is a marker for diabetes. So if you're doing the diabetic bloods, that's going to be, or the bloods regarding health screening, that's going to be very relevant. Here we go on page 9. So there's a lot of stuff on page 9 with this. So non-diabetic. So basically, so the first thing you need to see is this patient diabetic or not? So you need to go into their notes, click up here again, and you go to summary, and in here it should say type 2 diabetes, type 1 diabetes, impaired fasting glucose, which is pre-diabetic. So there's diabetic, pre-diabetic. So if you get an idea, are they diabetic, are they pre-diabetic, are they not? So this person is not diabetic. Return to result. So they're not diabetic, and HbA1c is less than 6. It says 6.3 here, which is normal. So if that was 6.3, that would kind of be borderline. If that was 6.5, it would be raised, but it's definitely 5.1, so that's completely normal. We'll get into the other ones in a minute. Let's just see if we've got any other ones actually. Here we go. So this is pretty barn door normal, but barn door abnormal. So this one is 12.2. So it doesn't matter if they're diabetic or not. If it's over 6.5, it's abnormal. If it's over 10, it's definitely abnormal. So whatever. So this would be passed to a clinician. Now this is one of the problems. They've started reporting 2 different readings for hemoglobin A1c. This is the modern version of the readings, which is in millimoles per mole. This is how we understand it, which is percentages. We're still using percentages most of the time. I have to have a chart on my desk to literally convert one to the other. It's really tricky, so I wouldn't worry about that. We might have to go through things again but they're hoping to go over to this method. Hopefully not anytime soon. So yeah, So let's just look at the U's and E's here again. So this is obviously completely abnormal. It's quite helpful because on these, when they're abnormal, they give you these big red crosses. So that's pretty clear, isn't it? Above the recommended range. So when you see a big red cross, leave it alone. Big red cross, leave it alone. A minus means it's below the recommended range. I don't know, but anyway. So a big red minus, probably leave it alone anyway. Minuses, you know, this is abnormal. So that gives you immediate kind of visual reference, you know, just like, okay, that's not right. But the vitamin D here is over 75, it's over 50. And remember, vitamin D is over 50, fine, you can file them. So you'll be able to file this one. So let's have a look at this. Now we're getting to cholesterols. So there's a whole page on cholesterol, which is page 6. So, cholesterol, again, you need to know, is the patient for primary prevention or secondary prevention? Primary prevention is, well, it's easy to do it the other way around. Secondary prevention is if the patient has had a stroke, peripheral arterial disease, kidney disease, CKD, or diabetes. So you look in the notes and you see in the summary if they've had any of those things. You can also look up here because they will have a tab. So I think the kidney tab has a little picture of a kidney, the diabetic tab has a picture of sugar or something like that, and you can go along here and say, oh look, they're diabetic, they've got kidney disease, they've had a stroke. It will actually tell you up here. So this person has not got any of that, so they are primary prevention. That means we're trying to prevent them having any of those things in the future, rather than the fact that they've already had them, and we're trying to reduce their risk of getting it again. In general, if cholesterol's over 7.5, whatever, that's abnormal, and here it's 7.9. So if it's between kind of 4 and 7, then you're in kind of what do I do with it area. If it's above 7, it's definitely abnormal, and that should be passed to a clinician. If it's under 5, it's normal. So generally speaking, I would say if it's under 5, file it as normal. If it's over 7, file it. Yeah, don't file it, pass it. If it's between 5 and 7, that's when you're getting kind of into a more difficult range, and you might start feeling confident if you learn how to. You know, if you're an HCA who's doing NHS health checks, if you know how to calculate Q-risk scores, if you know how to do all that, great. You know, you're going to be doing all that. But if you're just a technician, if you're just an admin person, I'll just leave it well alone. So BMP is an interesting one. So BMP is a marker of heart failure. It's quite a straightforward one actually in itself, because it's either negative or positive. If it's less than 400, just double check myself there, if it's less than 400 it's negative, which means they don't have heart failure. So you can file that as normal. If it's above that, then it's abnormal, so just leave it for the clinician. So bone profile, again, you can see here, look, you got your big red cross, you got your yellow, you got your red thing, just leave that alone. Calcium, you've got a range there, so obviously if that was within that range, you could file that as normal. It's not. So steer away from cholesterol at the moment. Liver function tests. Again, liver function tests are reasonably straightforward because they're either in the normal range or they're not. And you've actually got normal ranges for all of them here, so that's really helpful, apart from that one. Why? But generally speaking, if you've got normal ranges, you can see if they're in the normal range. To be honest, if all of these were in the normal range, they'd come up as in the blue section, because it